In an attempt to test a theory, I'm trying to get this out early, so this is a very basic, but absolutely the exact same review I'm going to be getting out later on. So I'm going to hop right into this. The Cerritos is acting as ferry for 3 diplomats from Betaziod on their way to Risa from Angel 1, because an unknown vessel apparently has been attacking ships in the sector. Wacky, huh? While on board, the crew becomes disturbingly emotional, which our newest crew member, Talin, doesn't really care for, as she pens a letter to her previous captain, hoping her banishment will end. It's a time to relax and have a great emotional outburst. On this week's episode of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4, Episode 5, Empathalogical Fallacies. Some great throwback illnesses here, as well as some fun name drops, and some pretty familiar locations get discussed on this fairly simple but entertaining episode, with a few interesting reveals and an unexpected twist. So let's just get to it. For my first standout scene, it's going to be the reveal that Caitians used to eat Betazoids. So the 3 diplomats head to the med bay, part of their tour of the ship, and it's revealed that T'Ana's people used to eat the Betazoids. So there's a little joke and banter going about, but that is something I wouldn't have actually thought of, although it was cute that there was confusion about who ate who there at the beginning. The whole interaction was really fun, and I enjoyed the giggling banter, that everybody just sort of getting along, while T'Ana still looks like she could use a snack. My second standout scene is going to be Dr. Miglamote destroying, just like completely thrashing the replicator. Yeah, so while everyone's emotions are all kind of jumped up, the one person you think might have a handle on it, just a little bit at least, out of experience and education, has lost his mind because his soup has not been properly regurgitated. It doesn't taste a thing like his mom used to make. And so he goes after the replicator with a stool. For some reason, this just cracked me up. Out of all the different things going on, he was really upset about his dinner. And overall, it's just funny to see the counselor lose it. My third standout scene is going to be the spies take the ship. This was a hilariously funny cartoon action scene with the lipstick batons being whipped out, a little tricky empathy to get 2 crew members together, and just general chaos on the bridge. It's obvious the ladies were well trained, and well, hey, they did look good hijacking the ship. Of course, their heading was a bit of a problem. Going straight to the neutral zone? I mean, there had to be a better route. But finding out that our diplomats were actually spies was really quite funny. Watching them in action was fantastic. And my fourth standout scene for this episode is going to be the spies' pictures and information on that rogue ship. So after the crew has retaken the ship, and I need to point out that Boimler finally saw some action with security in that scene, we find out that there is information on this ship going about. It's not just us who knows that there's this little guy running around destroying vessels for no good reason. Obviously, at least the Betazoid, so I'm assuming the Federation is aware of what's going on. And so they've been sent to try and gather more information. And while, yes, this did result in hilarity, it does give us, the viewer, an idea of where the people in our show are on information and knowledge about the big bad that is sort of attacking their quadrant. And we've reached that halfway point. If you've enjoyed this video so far, please don't forget to like and subscribe below. You can always join as a Patreon or a member of this channel to get a little extra content, sometimes behind the scenes updates. And if you're a patron, you'll get these videos with no ads on the Patreon side. Of course, if you'd just like to do one little thank you, I always accept super thanks below. And now let's back to the video. For my first honorable mention, and yeah, these are the elements that make the episode itself very interesting, it's going to be Talin's letter. The act of her putting this letter together, it really does reveal quite a bit about Talin that we just simply didn't know. I mean, I think you and I probably thought that she was a transfer or an exchange officer of some sort. The fact that she was banished, for me anyway, that was brand new information. And of course, this letter and her feelings lead to a whole lot of stuff, including the discussion with Mariner explaining how and why she was banished. She went by instinct, and that's just not what Vulcans do. Again, we see this reoccurring element within the series this season, and that is a lack of confidence. She doesn't feel like she's Vulcan enough. She's not good enough. And her feelings of not quite fitting in, well, that's what causes all this turmoil of not being Vulcan enough, being banished, being stuck on a ship where she doesn't feel she fits in either. And this time it was Mariner who kind of gave her a pep talk. She's obviously Vulcan enough. If she's got an illness only Vulcans get, she's probably Vulcan. And this is where we got a little name dropping, but really it's the sympathy, the empathy shared between Mariner and T'Lyn here. You could physically see T'Lyn getting herself back and ready to move forward. And she decides to stay on the Cerritos while she does it. My second honorable mention, and yeah, this is all out of order, but it's going to be the introduction of the diplomats. So we see that the diplomats are getting a ride from Angel 1 to Risa because of that rogue ship going around destroying vessels in the quadrant. So we've got the Cerritos acting as ferrymen for the diplomats, which is an interesting situation to be in itself. But I think it's hilarious that we get a look at some other Betazoid women around Lwaxana Troy's age and how they act. And oddly, it's not dissimilar. Growing up, whenever I watched The Next Generation, I thought Lwaxana was a unique and interesting individual all on her own. And let's face it, she really is. But she might not be the only one who doesn't quite follow etiquette of other cultures, saying a little more than they should, dressing a little more flamboyant than the people around them, and indulging in the relaxing amenities wherever they are. Now, my third honorable mention, that element that really drove this episode, and really in this case, it truly did drive the entire episode, and that's going to be T'Lyn's emotional turmoil. Now, I know the letter feels like this is all the same thing, but it isn't, because that letter didn't affect everything. T'Lyn's emotional state and the fact that she is Vulcan, it was a great twist. I, too, was like, well, it's the Betazoid women. They're causing all the trouble, Zendi fever. But no. It's completely T'Lyn at the ripe old age of 62. It was a crazy twist to think that she had Bendai syndrome. I never would have. We found out before on The Next Generation, again, that it's something that affects the much older. 62, not that old for a Vulcan. As she's walking into the bar, though, you can see people change their attitudes just as she's approaching, from mildly boisterous to outright crazy, including those at the table. Rutherford, Mariner, and Tendi all seem to become overly emotional just as she approaches. What a coincidence. But she's the driving force for all of these overreactions, from the captain wanting to seem cool to Tendi just being overly excited. And Mariner is super motivated, which, she usually is, but it's on a whole nother level. Basically, everyone's personality has been intensified tenfold, and it's really, really funny. Now, for my fourth and last honorable mention for this episode, it's going to be the security downtime. So Rutherford sees that Boimler has just put too much pressure on himself. He's overwhelmed by what he feels are all the obligations now as a junior grade lieutenant. And so Rutherford arranges a day off. But Boimler is with security, and so he's expecting training day or something action-packed. Not slam poetry, charades, puzzles, and tarot cards. By the time security has retaken the bridge and Boimler and Shax are on their way having a walk through the corridor, it's revealed that Shax, he takes his security and wellness of the entire crew very seriously. And that means when one of the crew members is just feeling too much of it and needs a day off, he takes that seriously as well. It was an interesting moment where we see how in-depth Shax feels his duties are. And it's that kind of thing that really makes Lower Decks a super fun and relatable show to watch, even in the silliest of times. This episode was kind of, a palate cleanser. It wasn't action-packed, though there were some action scenes, and it wasn't really revealing, although we did get a couple of revealing tidbits. It was more of a filler where we get to enjoy the show rather than try to dissect it piece by piece. Well, most of us anyway. And that ending scene with the Romulans being just disappointed in the fact that the Cerritos didn't cross the line was totally worth it. We found out also that the Federation seems to be aware of the rogue ship, and they're doing something to try to gather more information. There isn't a whole lot more they can do at this point, but information gathering is a step in the right direction. And we also learned that age isn't always a factor with Bendai syndrome, which I think is interesting because again, it was pointed out that it really was connected to age on the next generation. We had a lot of fun with our characters this episode. We got to see them be themselves, but intensified. The captain taking how people think of her just a little too seriously. Mariner's need to go make sure everyone is safe and doing well, and finish whatever quest or mission she happens to be on. Boimler, of course, not affected like everyone else had been around the area that T'Lyn had been. Kind of got off easy, but he was still frustrated because he was just so bored and not getting the time out of security he was expecting to. And I really did adore Tendy's claim that T'Lyn was her best friend, tearfully. I like the extra bit of animation around the eyes for the characters as they're just exhausted with emotion, and I think that that's a fairly relatable thing as well. It's those little touches that you really notice. Now, as far as what's going to come up next, I'm hoping that we'll get more information on that rogue ship. It's one of those mysteries that it really doesn't make sense. Nobody's seen that type of ship before. We have no idea who's inside of it, if anyone's inside of it. It's an enigma. Now, I hope you enjoyed this quick, plain version of my review. I'll get my regular one out tomorrow or maybe Saturday. I wanted to see if this review coming out earlier did a little better on YouTube. If so, then why am I throwing in all the extra pictures and flares? But if not, I'll be back to that again next week, and this video will disappear from the ether, or at least from my channel. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to comment below and let me know why. Do you just like getting it sooner, or do you not like all the pictures and extras I throw in? I really am curious. Remember, this channel is still fairly new. I haven't even made it to 2 years. In fact, I think I'm just barely a year and a half old now. So any information you give, it really does help me improve. And if you'd like more Star Trek content or just wacky information in general about the strike and what's happening with our writers, go ahead and check out one of these videos, and I'll see you there. And do we have sound? Yep, we have sound. It's amazing when something works. Hey.